harbor in our front yard. I still live very close to that same place, and now the airplanes are breaking the sound barrier, and transportation, I don't know where it's going to quit. I think they, from the horse and buggy, which I barely remember, to outer space is the biggest thing I can think about.
I don't think that he probably has in mind, but what came to my mind was, I guess it's a change in my attitude that's the biggest thing. I never dreamed when I was, but maybe not Patsy's age, but some of these younger ones, I never dreamed that nobody. There are a younger generation than Patsy here. What I want to point out is that I always supposed because people looked older and they didn't lift their feet up as high when they walked, I never dreamed that inside they were still real young and enjoyed about the same things they always had. And I guess I'd say that, I don't know at what point in time, it finally occurred to me that nobody else is supposed to make me happy. I've got to do that all by myself.
I wish I had something profound to say, but I don't think I do. But I think the computer age or the information age has changed about the most of anything since I can remember.
Maybe it's because what I'm interested in to some extent and don't have too much time to think about it. The thing that would impress me, I think, is probably travel and communication. How everything we know instantly. I believe a guy could go to the moon and wouldn't be much more spectacular than somebody going across the United States or across the ocean when I can first remember. I believe, without more time to think, there's a greater communication between denominations. The ecumenical movement is much more than now it was then. Brother Jay, I think kind of trouble knowing what we're talking about, got his hearing aid.
I'm supposed to answer what's the biggest change?
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. I think it was the size of the Coppock family. That didn't surprise me at all. I don't think it might be in communication. We've got this facsimile going now. You can send a message across the United States used as easy as using the telephone. I should say the changes in communication are the biggest changes I've seen. Of course, now I have to make up my mind about it.
I don't think MP's quite telling it all, but we were talking about this in the cafeteria a little bit. There's a lot of difference in the way children are raised and the disciplines that we have. There's no way to explain it, really. I didn't think of that.
Any more questions? Another question? Another must be solved. Go ahead.
Kind of a follow-up. What do you think our biggest challenge will be after, let's see, after the turn of the century, going forward? What will our biggest challenge be going forward as a nation?
Get the night for that day.
Mission impossible.
I wasn't really prepared for these kind of questions. I really think the big challenge is to learn to live in peace.
It's really a question. I guess I would agree with everybody. I just think we just got to somehow get a handle on this defense budget. You know, we can knock off some of them bombers and ships and feed and save a lot of people. I just think we got to get with it.
See, I forgot the question. I think the biggest challenge we face is raising this crop of children. I hold this half an hour, like I said.
I want to ask more of a family kind of question. One of the unique things about our family is that it's both an Ohio and a New Mexico family. It was bipolar, not bi-coastal, but it was bipolar. What kind of an impact do you think that had on you and on us and on the family, that we really had feet in New Mexico and feet in Ohio? Any one of you want to answer that question?
I'm just almost positive that it gives us a broader view. I visit a lot of communities in a lot of places, and they're probably better off than I am, but they're so ingoing, so interested in this little area where they live, and it just, the rest of the world probably hardly exists. And I think that what you're saying here perhaps gives us a little different outlook on people and getting along with people and things like that.
I think Stanley said what I would have said. I was born in New Mexico, but don't ever remember living there. But I do have a lot of wanderings about, you know, what went on there and the place I was born, yet not know, you know, not to have experienced living there. And many people will think that I was born in Ohio, and I always have to straighten them out. I wasn't born in Ohio, I was born in New Mexico. And so that's my comment on it.
It crosses my mind that I think even within the family, there's a different reactions to it. Maynard has always seemed pretty content staying put. So has Martha. I think I spent my early childhood dreaming about getting to live somewhere else. I think I was born with what you call a wanderlust, that the most boring thing I could contemplate would be staying put. And I suppose that might be the genes of my father, I don't know, because I think my mother was never that happy about being in the West. But I think for me, it gave me a whole lot of daydreaming time as I was growing up. I don't know what it was like out there, but I surely had a lot of imagining that I did. And even today, when people ask me where I'm from, I say, well, I guess I had two homes, Ohio and New Mexico, but I feel like my temperament is Western, not Ohio.
I was born in Ohio too, but I was conceived in New Mexico. We made the trip back to Ohio, and they arrived in Ohio in September, and Mary and I were born in December. But somewhere back in there, when my mother and father were trying to get settled and get their feet rooted someplace, they lived in a dugout. And you know what that is? It's a hole in the ground that you hope will be built into a house someday. And that's a very humble beginning. I think that having the experience that my parents had in getting started has helped me to appreciate more what I have today. I don't have a lot, but I sure can appreciate what I do have because of my background, I think.
Excuse me. Oh, sorry.
somewhere else besides where you are, and some other people that are just as good as you, and just as valuable, and just as smart. It broadened me. I think that's what it did for me, the experience of these living in different places.
Tom had a question back there.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know if you could guess what Reynolds, if she were alive today, since she died, what make her the happiest and the saddest of what's happened?
This would be.
Well, I know what always to me,
Go ahead.
I know what to me was the saddest that comes to my mind, was that they had to decorate a tumbleweed for a Christmas tree in the West. And I don't think Mother ever got over, remembering how tough life was out there. And so I think we younger ones really love being in a big family, but we never had the responsibility that Jay and Maynard did. And I think our older brothers were more like another set of parents for us. And so I don't expect them to have the same fond memories of home as we younger ones did.
We don't want you to get the idea that my mother complained about their early life together. But when she wrote her little memoirs, and we still have copies of them, she gave an entirely different side of the West than my father did. But I think the thing that would please her the most would be right here tonight, seeing all of this and sharing this with us. I think that would be very, very happy for her.
Tom, I kind of lost your question and some of their answers. Would you read quickly, please?
Well, my question was that if Grandma were still alive, what would you find the best and the worst of what's happened? You can answer anything like your memories of her.
Well, I'm going to try to kind of stay with your question. What, if she were back, you would see.
If she were here now,
Yeah.
at the time she died, what do you think was the best thing that happened? What would be the worst thing that happened?
I wonder if you're thinking of the family life of the nations. Well, I believe somebody mentioned this. I think she would be just more than pleased with the way we're communicating and hanging together and so forth. I imagine she would be saddened by some of the tragedies that I would say these girls have suffered and so forth through the years. I'm just glad she don't have to worry about that.
I was in Miami, New Mexico, the place where Nevin was born, and we had a pretty good Christmas. We got little cloth Indian suits, Jay and I, and little tin ducks. We round them up, and they run around in a circle, and their heads bobbed up and down. We had hung up our stockings, and I've got a few little presents. That's the first one I can remember, and that's about as good a one as I had.
What year would it be?
1913,
Yeah.
that's cool. Nevin was born the next month.
I don't know that I remember a Christmas when Pop dressed up in a brown overcoat,
That's the same one.
and I declared the next day that he had a Santa Claus suit. And Mom said, no, he had that brown overcoat with bells around. And that's what I think mind over matter. I remember the first date I wrote. I wonder if anybody else has the same experience. The first date I can remember was 1960, and that was the year that I had to write at the top of my first examination paper.
Quite a year that I was born.
What are we talking about?
You know, as far as the family is concerned, we always had Christmas, and there wasn't a lot of toys, a lot of sense of humor, there wasn't no such a thing, but we had Christmas. Now, as far as lighting up stores, putting decorations in the yard and playing carols from Thanksgiving on, that come afterwards quite a lot.
We did, I don't know if we always did, but we did have a Christmas tree at times I remember, and my father or my older brothers went out in the fence row somewhere and chopped off the cedar tree sometime, brought it in. Mom would popcorn, we'd string popcorn, and I guess there was money for cranberries, and they made cranberry chains and paper chains, and that's probably about all that was on the Christmas tree. But the other thing I think about now that I think some of these younger children would appreciate or think about, we hung up our own stocking that we took off. And we had a nice fireplace, had it been closed in, but there was a nice mantle above it. And we hung, as I remember, the stockings hung on this fire mantle. And usually they had a couple of bulges in them, which would be an orange and an apple, and it might be a few nuts and some hard Christmas candy that, of course, always stuck together with the shell peanuts and all that kind of stuff.
As a Christmas before we were 10, I was just told recently that my memory on this wasn't quite right, but the church in Middle District felt real sad when they found out we 4 girls shared one doll. So the next Christmas, there was a missionary barrel, and there was a doll for each of us, is what I was told by Goldie Davidson just this year. And I didn't remember ever having all 4 of us have to share one doll, but that's what she told me.
I do remember that getting a doll, that was my biggest Christmas ever when I got my first doll. But the other thing that was really important to me was to come downstairs and see in the middle of our dining room table a pink cut glass dish that had, all kinds of hardtack candy in it. And you could go up there and you could get 2 or 3 pieces at one time. That's the truth. I mean, that was Christmas to us. We didn't have, you kids listening? We didn't have lots and lots of things like you did. And that's what I meant way back when I said we have the frame of reference to be able to appreciate things in a way that some of you don't have. And the other thing was we got at church, we got a candy cane and an orange to carry home. And that was really special, an orange.
I kind of hate to do this, I said there's so many questions coming, but I just got to say something about Christmas and all these little tiny kids. I suppose for I don't know how many years, 35 to 40, I played Santa Claus was down in Springer in the schools there. And I'm telling you, to these little guys, when they come past Santa Claus, it really cuts the ice with them. I mean little kids, they think that Santa Claus is really good.
I forgot to say that Jay's the one that blowed the whole theory about Santa Claus for me, and it just about made me lose my faith in humanity when I found out there wasn't any Santa Claus.
Yeah, we got another question.
Sometimes
Jerry.
it's good not to be able to hear.
I would like to hear Uncle Jay recount the events surrounding his decision to move from Ohio to Texas, dates involved, transportation, highway conditions, and then from Texas to New Mexico, and also Uncle Stanley then, what happened as he moved. And it's that came about.
The question is, the situation when you moved from Ohio, Texas, and from Texas to New Mexico, the dates, road conditions, and when you decided to move.
Well, they're running me out. I never talked to one of them things before.
You're not lying to it now.
13, I think. I think my father acquired the property there or made some trades the year New Mexico became a state. And then I think we moved to 13. And then the main reason I moved, made that move was that my parents took me over there. Then we lived there in 1920. And I was all enthused about that move because they had big barns on the high. And I was good at crawling up in barns and tearing down spare nests. And I wanted to get back there where they had them big barns where there was more spare nests. So I lived there 20 years. And I moved back west to Texas in 1940. And my reason for making that move was that I disliked the cloudy weather and the hoeing corn, hauling manure, and a few little things like that. And then when I left Texas and moved to New Mexico, I've always been a livestock lover, and I was more interested in running livestock than I was farming and planting. And I'm still here. That's not great. Thank you.
Jerry, he first come out on a motorcycle, he eliminated that from, but now, you're asking about highway conditions and things like that.
I was primarily interested in from when he was married and then went to Texas and bought his property and came back and went back to Texas, then moved to New Mexico. And, you know, the years there and how, you know, that two-wheeler trip to Texas back in those days, what, you know, what he could remember about those times. His trip and so forth, and then moving the family.
One of the things I remember, or I noticed most, I don't remember ever having a key to a house I lived in for the first 40, 45 years, or 50 years, or maybe 60. I never had a house key. That's a big change to what things are. When you spoke about roads, the first time I ever rode on a paved road was about 10 to 14 miles from Lamar, Colorado in 1920 when we drove back to Ohio. And we come across a little stretch of paved road, and it was wide enough for one car. And it went for about 10 miles.
Lamar, Kansas, wasn't it?
Go get a map and see if there's a Lamar in Canada.
There is.
I didn't drill all of these questions. It's been a good life seeing all them changes, but some of them changes bother me. I'm not going to get into it. On the world on the adults, because that's my main subject.
How long did the motorcycle trip take? A day and a half?
I rode anybody here ever ride a motorcycle? I rode a motorcycle in 1937, 74, Harley Davidson, from Dayton, Ohio, Joplin, Missouri, 620 miles in 1940 in one day. It only took 13 hours. 42 miles an hour. I rode a cycle all my life, and pretty much. I don't recommend it.
I it was just kind of, I was quite a little younger, and it was just kind of wanderlust thing. I didn't like the Ohio winters and a few things. I think it was kind of a, and actually, I haven't got time to take it up. I'd sure like to. This was kind of a pioneer thing. Well, I was about 20 years old, and I had a truck there in our business, and we put everything on. We had it, and we peeled out to Texas, and we built a house, 3-room house for $1,100 or. So, other questions?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yes, growing up, I got what I thought was an unbiased view of what the Comic family was all about and how they were raised. And as I get older, I find out there's more bias as I hear about it. What I really want to know is, from the 3 sisters, who really milked the cows? This seems to be very important, and I want to know the real truth. Will you tell me who really did the most milking when we were young?
As far as I'm concerned, I don't know. We all milk. I often milk 6 or 7 cows, and I know the other girls do too.
How many fellas milk? How many guys milk?
Oh, they milk.
Of course, on my viewpoint is biased, but Mary was kind of mother's main helper, and there were times when she didn't milk, but she was always working. And Martha could always manage not to get the last cow.
I know why my son asked that, I guess. Because I talked quite a bit about it, and I didn't like to milk cows, and I talked a lot about the fact that I didn't like to milk cows, but I milk cows anyhow. And I think I would have to admit, there were times that I kind of dilly-dallied around on the cow, you know, so that I wouldn't have to milk the very last cow. I will admit that now, but I never did then.
The person who milked the last cow had to clean the equipment. Wash the buckets and stuff, right?
John, can I say one comment about the milking? The fastest milker in the family was our Aunt Audrey.
Absolutely.
She was the fastest milker, bar none.
Yeah, right. I
She
agree.
milked
I didn't inherit any of that.
Uncle Maynard said he was born milking during his time. Jason, you get that? Marla?
I've got a similar question. What were the best chores? What were the worst chores? Who had to do them? And who decided?
The worst chore was cleaning out the chicken coop. Not only because of the chicken manure, but we had lice in the chicken house. And when you got through cleaning the chicken house, you were covered with chicken lice. And I think some of we girls would tell you that Stanley was the straw boss. And he told us that if we didn't get that manure out of there, he'd feed it to us.
Our mother was a genius. She really didn't boss us a lot. But when we come downstairs on a summer morning, we hardly could bear to look at that blackboard because there was a list yay long on chores that must be done that day. And she didn't care who did it, but nobody could quit work until the whole board of chores was done. And I don't think I minded the milking because you can daydream and you don't burn the potatoes. And there were a lot of reasons why milking suited me better than jobs that are very particular.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you about the job that was the best. I like to go after the cows. They were in the woods at the back of the farm, and there was a lane leading back to them. And I could go slow or I could go fast, but the fun about it was that along the way, if you watched real close, you could see a bunch of these tumble bugs, if you know what they are, these little beetle things, and they have a ball about this big around. One gets on each side of it, and they roll it, and I could just follow those bugs around, and pretty soon here would come one of my sisters and wonder where I was and how come I hadn't gotten the cows up yet. But that's what I like to do is go out. Oh yes, and then there was a big mud puddle in this lane after a rain. And we had some cows that were pretty tame, and if you got up behind one of those cows and grabbed her by the tail, and she ran and you hung onto that tail, you could get across that puddle without getting your feet muddy.
My worst chore was helping Mary and Martha with their math problem.
As you all know, I grew up with just sisters, and I'd kind of like to know what it was like growing up with brothers. I'd like to address this to the aunts and see what kind of support you got. We always understood that whenever you brought home a boyfriend, that they were very kind and courteous. Starting with that Martha, I guess, I'd like to hear about how wonderful they were.
I didn't have any boyfriends, so
Wasn't there a butterfly?
yeah. Gosh. I know one of the fellas I went with had a great big long car. I don't know what it was, but he'd come a chugging up the lane, and my brother Stanley would say, "Here comes the green boat." Loud enough for him to hear if he'd want to.
That's right.
Well, all I remember about growing up with brothers is that we would lay down and die for them, but I don't know that they deserved it. Skyler and I think Nevin too kept a suffering list, and if you didn't shine their shoes or clean the car, they'd press their pants, they'd put you on the suffering list, and we never really found the list, and nothing bad ever happened. But we even cleaned out that old school bus. Everything they wanted us to do, we either had to do it or we went on the suffering list. That's how it was growing up with brothers.
Well, I'll tell you something good about my oldest brother. I was about 10 years younger than Maynard, and my birthday was coming around, and so I guess I said something to him in the evening about, tomorrow's my birthday, you know how you do. I was about 10 or 11, and he never did react when you said anything to him. He didn't know whether he liked it or didn't like it or even heard it. But the next day he worked in town, and the next day he came home, and of course my birthday was right 1st of September, and school was starting, and he came home with a pencil box for me to take to school, and never owned a pencil box before. We always had cigar boxes or something, and the cigar boxes didn't come from anybody in the family. But anyway, Uncle Maynard got me my first birthday present, I'm sure, was this pencil box, and I couldn't wait to go to school and show that thing off. I might just say, talking about the boyfriends, of course Stanley encouraged us to have boyfriends by, whenever Roy and Wilbur would come in the harvest time, he would make sure that they were competing against each other to show which one was the most virile and the most able to work on the farm, and he would stand back and watch.
Well, the echo was in here, I couldn't really hear what you were saying. I was downright, I don't know mean or not, but I'd given him a pretty rough time sometimes, but Murray's not going to say too much because she had a couple of boyfriends he wasn't too fond of, and I sometimes sort of stood guard there. You want me to go? Well, they were respectful. There was nothing particularly wrong with them. She just didn't happen to. Any other questions?
senator from Timbuktu.
Mayor is certainly right about leisure. She hated burdocks. I didn't have a armory with them at all. But Mama was the most generous, the most lovable, the most dependable person you could possibly have her mom.
Just for the younger people, burdocks are a weed. Okay. Yeah, burdocks are a
Mom?
That's fine. Uncle Jay?
Well, first of all, I would say that I remember about her, she was a very intelligent person. She could recite poems, she could sing. She taught us 1,000 gems of how to do love. And she was generous and she was loving. She was loving. I don't know what I could add. But the things that I remember about her are those gems she imparted to us.
Tell us, Jim. Tell us a couple of those people.
Oh, my goodness.
Just one each.
Was a little chicken in the barnyard, his friends were very few. He's always telling hens and geese and turkeys what they ought to do and say. That sort of thing. Give us a couple more.
King of dogs and calico cats side to side and table side. You almost have to have more meaning than that.
I'd like to say that I don't think any of the boys mentioned Mother's wit. She also had some sense of humor about her. I'm supposed to talk about my father. My father was a very stern person. He never whipped me or spanked me, but I knew he would if I didn't obey him. And I was very happy trying to please him. I think we younger people would have a different view. I don't remember when he wasn't a minister. He wasn't gone a lot. And I hated to see him leave home, and I was always glad when he came home. And many times, if he was gone very long, I don't know if he ever brought the boys anything, but he'd bring us some little glass dish or trinket that probably we could put in the hope chest. And he was a loving father, but you wouldn't think of him as kind of fathers we see around today, doting on the children and telling them that they were wonderful. We never heard that.
It's really difficult in 2 sentences. I remember how kind he was to anyone that was sick. He wouldn't leave the farm if somebody had a temperature. Audie sat on his lap until she was 19 years old, and she felt bad. And that didn't quite go along with him sitting at his desk and studying and not really communicating with us much at all. But I guess one thing that maybe some of you'd enjoy, that he did have a sense of humor. And Martha, I think, and Stanley could get by with the most just because they had some humor. But we all could read it like nothing. Whenever the white spots showed on either side of his nose, we knew we weren't in trouble, and we actually had amused him. And that was great. But as you grew older and you discussed with him, he respected your right to your own opinion. I said if I would have been sick when I was young, I'd have gotten acquainted with him. But it took when I got older and really challenged on discussion and all, that I really began to appreciate him as a father and as a man and as a person you could admire. Been like this all our lives.
I'm a little bit embarrassed. I've had this whole line here to try to think what I could say about my father. I respected him highly. I remember having to be quiet a lot because he was studying, and I resented that a little bit at the time. But I didn't really, I don't think, knew my father very well until I got older. And I felt much closer to him as I got older. I really did. He was a kind of a quiet, stern. Somebody said he was stern. He didn't yell at you. He just spoke in a soft voice, and you heard it and heeded it, you know. He was just a great father. Wouldn't have traded him for anybody I've ever seen since.
One other thing for all you young parents, in the wintertime, we couldn't keep from being noisy, and he would bark out while he was typing, you sit on separate chairs until the clock strikes.
I just got done saying he never yelled.
But at least that was his discipline. Would you sit on a chair till the clock strikes? And we learned to tell time earlier than most anybody. Because it could be 1 minute or it could be 29.
I'll take time for one little story about Martha and Grandpa. Grandpa was going to Hershey, Pennsylvania for an annual conference, and of course you all know what's at Hershey, Pennsylvania. And this children ought to hear this. And Mother wrote him a postcard while he was at Hershey and asked Martha to take it to mailbox. And Martha took a little detour on the way to the mailbox and wrote on the side of the card, "Bring the kids some candy." And so, when Papa came home, he had, to us, a mountain of candy. And Mother said, "Papa, why did you get all that candy?" And he said, "Well, you had it on the card. It said on the side of the card, bring the kids some candy." I could walk about that time.
What surprises me about that story is that I don't see how in the world Martha was ever able to add another word on a card that Mother read.
I think that's probably a good note for us to stop on for this panel. I'm sure that any of them will be glad to give an opportunity to say one thing, one piece of wisdom to the. Yeah, he's just got a question.
It's not a question, a request. If you would go ahead and bring your remarks down as quickly as you can for those of us to enjoy.
Yeah, it's really nice too if you write down those little things that Grandma taught you, just gave us a couple examples of.
Like Grandpa did.
Just
It'll help to us now.
Yeah. In closing, do any of you want to say any words of wisdom, advice, or anything else to this group? Yes.
I remember one time when we had some kind of a meeting at the church, and some of the other churches involved, and of course, there were some girls there that was strange, and Stanley and Chalmer. Chalmer was a very good friend of Martha's, and also Stanley's, and they decided that they got to talking to a couple of these young ladies. They invited them home to supper, I guess, and come back to church in the evening. So they went over there and they sat down at the table, and Stanley and Chalmer and the girls and the old folks, and the mister said that he was PK, you know, preacher's kid. So he asked them to return thanks, one of them to return thanks. Stanley said, "Go ahead, Chuck."
That's pretty much gospel. I beat him to the punch. The folks never spent any time teaching me how to say a prayer, and it was kind of embarrassing to them.
Okay. Thank you very much.